All right, I tried to figure out a creative way to do an introduction, but it just made me sound like the stereotypical rattlesnake enthusiast. I'm a white male with a bald head and a beard between the ages of 18 and 80. I've been working professionally with rattlesnakes for about 6 years. I got my start working with Adaptation Environmental Services back in 2017 doing radio telemetry. And while doing that, we realized there was a need for mitigation within Colorado. What's my buttons?
Spacebar.
Oh, all right. As Colorado continues to grow, we are constantly getting rattlesnakes in neighborhoods. And there are a few issues that we've come across within the state of Colorado on how to mitigate these problems. One, the public doesn't think about rattlesnakes 50% of the year. It gets kind of cold, kind of hard to think about snakes, unless you're here. The other part is the state itself, trying to juggle being able to do removals within the state is very difficult. You have to have a scientific collections permit, which comes with all sorts of hoops you have to jump through. But that being said, working with adaptation, we've kind of manipulated that and worked with the state in order to be able to provide these services. The big one that we've started doing is rattlesnake fencing. It's very similar to what's been going on in Arizona for the last 15 years. We use a 1/4-inch mesh material that's galvanized steel. We wrap the entire yard with it. We bury it 6 inches underground, and it comes up a minimum of 30 inches. That 30 inches will vary depending on the HOA. I never go below 30, but it can go up. I've done it up to 6 feet. Which is ridiculous, but it makes the HOA happy. So there's a lot of rock that gets moved. We move all the rock, we dig down 6 inches, set our mesh in there, attach it to the fence itself. One of the other challenges we've discovered in Colorado is we get a lot of wind. And so we tried to keep it nice and just use as few screws as possible. Generally that doesn't work and we have to put in a lot more. But we try to make it look nice. In cases like this, one side of the fence has it, the other side doesn't. So we try to work with the homeowner and their neighbors, depending on how their neighbors feel about trying to modify their fence. Generally we stick to the inside of the property owner's area. Which can be creative. We had to, cut and do each individual section here individually because it just looks terrible if you try to stretch it 8 feet across. Wobbles and it doesn't look nice. We've also had faux rock walls that we've had to develop a process to get around. These are time consuming, but we have a good method to keep snakes from utilizing those as well. Gates are another thing we've had to kind of figure out. A lot of the ideas we've taken from Rattlesnake Solutions in Arizona, but Colorado is much different than the Sonoran Desert, and we've had to modify how we do things. So we pour a concrete curb under every gate, at least 6 inches wide, basically just giving the gate, if it's going to flex at all, it's a solid surface all the way across the bottom. And then we use steel sheets in order to seal up the sides and the bottom. We secure everything down to a 1/4 inch in order to keep all those babies out. Here's another couple examples of a finished gate. Again, Colorado's different. We have a lot of ground variations, so you got to be conscientious of how the gate swings and whether or not there's an incline on one side or the other. Because if you don't, you're not going to get a good gate swing, and the homeowner gets angry that they can't use their gates. Another couple examples. It's all Majority of my fences are all backed up to open space. As you can see here, these are the areas that get the most rattlesnakes. I don't anticipate having a bunch of repeat business because, again, Colorado is different than Arizona. We don't have the same sort of washes and natural areas that run through neighborhoods that they do in Phoenix or Tucson. So once these developments have grown, these neighborhoods no longer have an issue with rattlesnakes. And that's still, 6 to 10 years out. But this neighborhood is not gonna be an issue in 10 years. It's gonna be overdeveloped, the rattlesnakes are gonna get pushed out, and then we move on to the outskirts of towns once again. We do removals. We have a scientific collections permit that allows us to do that. This rattlesnake, we caught 2 rattlesnakes in this yard. As you can see, I have fencing on it. This house on the back side is a previous customer, and the side that the rattlesnake is on was their neighbor who we've done 2 estimates for, and they didn't want it either time. After pulling 2 rattlesnakes out of their yard, they finally agreed to a fence. So best salesman showed up, got the job done. Part of our removal process is pit tagging and data collection that will get turned into the state in order to do that. It's very time consuming, but it's part of the hoops that we jump through in order to provide these services. We are all professionally trained to handle rattlesnakes through adaptations venomous snake courses, and we always use protection. Words to live by. We always have snake boots or gaiters and a hook and a tong at all times. There are situations where you need one rather than the other, so it's best to have both and not need to worry about it. I also do education, and if you ever want to see a bunch of grown construction workers scream, take rattlesnakes. These guys had me come in to do a safety presentation for their project out in Golden. And so I was able to bring out 2 rattlesnakes, and they both sat fairly well. One of them got tired and decided to try to make a run for it, and the screaming ensued. But they were good sports about the whole thing, and they had lots of good questions. Education is probably the best mitigation avenue. And you can do presentations. I've done presentations for HOAs, I've done presentations for safety groups, but the best is always the individual. They retain the information better, and they get the opportunity to ask the questions they want answers to. And that's one of the things whenever we do a removal or when we're doing an estimate for a fence, we block out time to be able to talk to these people, to answer their questions. Whether they buy a fence or not, it doesn't matter. Knowing that they have more information about these awesome animals and how to live with them peacefully is what it's all about. So I'm always available to talk about rattlesnakes. If you want to talk rattlesnakes, find me. But I won't hold you guys up for your lunch. Thanks for listening. Anybody have any questions?
Do you find that one particular rattlesnake species hangs out in yards, or is it just dependent on where those houses are, location-wise? Do you have more one particularly?
So here in Colorado, in this particular area, we only have the prairie rattlesnake, which is the only one we're going to find. So we find the babies all the way up to the large adults. I've had a couple calls for people in southeast Colorado looking for Massasauga, helping with Massasaugas, or over near Grand Junction, I've had them call for concolor or the midget faded rattlesnakes. But generally, it's all the prairie rattlesnakes. Yeah.
I'm not exactly sure how true this is, but don't rattlesnakes come back to where they're
Yes and no. They have a historical range, which a lot of times their hibernaculas are all in the same spot. They come back to it year after year. Kind of what it comes down to more is resources and protection. So if they have food and shelter, generally we can relocate them and they stay put and they don't travel too far from where they were relocated. Of course, you every once in a while get that one random one that makes a run for it and gets lost. But when we also do removals, we try to stay within at least 1 mile of where we caught it so that it's still within its home range and it's not completely lost and doomed.
Excellent.
Cool. Thank you guys.
Thanks, Ryan.